Well, welcome again to Reading the Bible as an Ancient. And this is session 5, and we're dealing with sacrifices. And I've been promising to do this one from the beginning. And I'm sure there are some of you out there going, ugh, ugh. Why do we need to deal with sacrifice? Well, it's an important part of the whole Old Testament. It's an important part of the Jewish worldview. So we've got to grapple with it. It's there. We've got to come to some resolution about it. But I don't think it's as bad as you think. I think if you step back and look at it from the big perspective, I think you can begin to make some more sense of it than we have. I think we've put our focus in the wrong place occasionally. However, I'm not going to claim I understand the system holistically and all of its little bits. And from my reading, I sense that other authors who are Old Testament theologians are really grappling with the sacrifice system even now in 2020. There's stuff currently being written that kind of grapples with it. So watch this space, maybe in the next 10 years or so, somebody will have an insight into the text that really gives us a clearer perspective. But let's, as has been our practice, head into some difficult text and launch from there. The Psalms are brilliant for pointing us in the direction of text that we've just wanted to read over the top of and not read into the ancient worldview. Psalm 50. I have no need of a bull from your stall or of goats from your pens, for every animal in the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the insects in the fields are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Sacrifice thank offerings to God, fulfill your vows to the Most High, and call on me in your daily trouble. I will deliver you and you will honor me. So you can see the reversal going on here. It's God asking Israel a question. And the question is, why do you treat me as though I need food? I have no need of a bull from your stall. So, who in our day and age would have imagined God needing food anyway? That's a ridiculous thought. Well, the thing is, Egypt and Mesopotamia and other places in the world, the idea is, as we've already discussed, the gods are enough like us that they need food and clothing and drink. So sacrifices were literally to feed the gods. And the deal is, from the God's perspective, look after me and I will do my best to look after you. It's called the Great Symbiosis. And unfortunately, we actually hear Christians talking like this. If I do this for God, God will do this for me. If I do this, He will heal me. Sometimes that happens. But it's the wrong basis on which to approach God. It's the wrong attitude to take to Yahweh. We're not in it to do deals. We serve Yahweh, and whatever comes, comes. So why would Israel be into sacrifices anyway if they're not really to be participating in the ancient worldview of the great symbiosis to begin with? So lately I've been reading a book on Israel's calendar, and an example popped out from that might help. The farming year in ancient Israel started in September, started in the autumn equinox. The rains came in what we might call winter. Ancient Israel has more of a wet, dry season. 2 seasons, not 4. So for most countries, most nations, the nations as the Bible would call them, the year started with work. The crops go in the new year. And that's the hard work of tilling and planting. Israel's new year was to start in the spring equinox, 6 months difference. And that's when you harvest. And the author was suggesting that the difference is to change the worldview from work to gift. If you start with the harvesting, the reaping, then it changes how you see the world to the gift of a new harvest. And I think if we take that big open view of worldview kind of systems into sacrifice, I think we can begin to make some progress. Sacrifice is just a thing the ancient world did. So Yahweh has a choice. Does he say, don't do any sacrifice? And they all go, what kind of world is that? Or kind of say, well, do sacrifice, but do it different. Which one is going to be easier? Not easy, but easier for the ancients to do. And no author has kind of positioned it like that, but I think that's how to make sense of what's going on. How to keep the system familiar and safe enough, but changing it all the same. The nations did sacrifice to feed the gods, to keep order, to keep the world working. The Israelites did sacrifice to keep covenant, to obey the commands of Yahweh. And that may be all there is to it. Just keep covenant. And there's obviously some attitude of a cost involved. Sacrifice, do something that's costly towards God. You're not getting off scot-free. Yahweh is the one that is in charge of the world in a big sense, in the maintaining and the sustaining. You've got to show that you're all in. Some of the offerings are just burnt offerings. So they're burnt. The incense rises to Yahweh, not whole food presented to him. Some of the food feeds the priests. Some of the sacrifices or festivals are more like big parties that everybody gets to eat the food. But actually it was in the calendar book. The first bread's baked. There are waved offerings so that the aroma of the people keeping the commands of God wafts to Yahweh. I think it's a little bit more fascinating than our usual preoccupation with the sacrifice of the lamb for Passover or the atonement sacrifice, both involving blood. I think the big picture of sacrificial system, I think, is a bit more interesting if we tease it out a bit. What's interesting is this idea of the great symbiosis basically has its own book in the Bible. And that's the book of Job. Now, what I'm going to introduce to you still has unresolved problems in it. I think it helps us read the book of Job better, but it doesn't address all the hairy issues with that book. So right off the bat, I want to say, I think we have a tendency to try and extract stuff out of books of the Bible, rather than letting the books of the Bible guide us into their thinking. And the book of Job is one of these. Pay attention to how it opens. In chapter 1, in the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. The man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. Now, I've heard lots of church expositions on the book of Job which basically say, no, he wasn't. He couldn't have been. We all know that everybody's not blameless and upright. The book says he is. Let's take it like that. And then a little way further on in the chapter 1, Satan. Now, for an Old Testament book, that may not be the best translation, but that's what we're dealing with. Satan answered the Lord, I've been roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth through it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Here you've got Yahweh saying he's blameless and upright. A man who fears God and shuns evil. Satan's reply is, does God fear you for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds have spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. In other words, if he doesn't get blessed, he won't follow you. See what's going on? He doesn't say he's not blameless. He says he's blameless because he's doing it for stuff. And Yahweh says, no, he's not. This is a perfect, great symbiosis pitch. Job's in it for the stuff, so he follows Yahweh. And in following Yahweh, Yahweh responds by blessing him. If you've done right, you get right. If you've done bad, you get bad. That's the deal. Let's jump to Job 22. Eliphaz the Temanite says, can a man be of benefit to God? Can even a wise person benefit him? What pleasure would it give the Almighty if you are righteous? What would he gain if your ways are blameless? It is for your piety that he rebukes you and brings charges against you. Is not your wickedness great? Are not your sins endless? You demanded security from your relatives. For no reason you stripped people of their clothing, leaving them naked. Eliphaz is making an accusation based on Job's status. Job is sick, he's lost everything. Therefore, he must have done wrong. Now, we know from the beginning, the narrator and Yahweh both say he has done no wrong. But Eliphaz is making an accusation based on his situation. If Job is getting it in the neck, he must have done something wrong. And we see this run right through the book of Job, right to the very end. This battle over the nature of righteousness. Do you do it? Do you follow Yahweh for stuff? and blessing, or do you follow Yahweh as kind of just because you do, just because you love him? That's the question. And that's the fundamental question in the ancient world. And I'd say in our hearts, that's got to be the fundamental question today. What attitude do we take to God? Is it about stuff and blessing, or is it about loving, following, serving, just cause? John Walton came up with the term disinterested righteousness. Disinterested in the outcomes. You could end up in prison. You could end up starved. You can end up beaten to death. All things that we probably don't face. But what about being ignored? Kind of left without people being terribly engaged with you. Peer groups that kind of just leave you on the side. Even, in 50s, right through your working age. Maybe not succeeding because you're a Christian. Not because they're trying to be nasty to you, just because they can't be bothered dealing with you. So I've already mentioned this. Israel does sacrifice to keep covenant. Burnt sacrifices. Sacrifices to feed the priests. Sacrifices of staff to have a big party to celebrate being under Yahweh's care. And there's also underneath this, there has to be something about the issue of rest as well, which we'll come to. And rest is a big topic in itself. Next talk. The idea of who are we serving, who's got the power, who's in control. So let's go back and let's see how these topics of gods, temples, images of gods, and sacrifice are all connected. In Egypt, you have many, many gods. Gods who are trying to create chaos, gods that give light, the stars, which are gods, the sun, the moon, all who have functions, who give life, multiple systems. So you have these gods, and they have functions in the cosmos, in the system. They have jobs to do. And from a human point of view, the humans are dependent on the gods doing their jobs. Otherwise, it all falls apart and humans die. So you want to keep the gods happy. So you build temples so you can access the gods. But that's not enough. So you put images of the gods in a temple, and then the belief is that how you treat these gods will inhabit these idols, these created figures. The gods will inhabit them, And then you can communicate to the gods and look after them. So you sacrifice food and drink to them. So you see the system, it's all chain linked. So how's the Yahweh system? Yahweh builds the cosmos as a temple for himself. He then places humans in the center of that as his image. He tells us to rule his temple. He tells us to look after each other. That because we are the image, we must feed and clothe each other. We must care for the other images. So our sacrifices are both to Yahweh to say, we know you're still in charge, and to each other. So let's come back to Psalm 50. I have no need of a bull from your stall or goats from your pens, for every animal of the forest is mine and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains and the insects in the field are mine. It's a curious worldview where Yahweh even cares for cares enough that the communicator writes in insects. Even today we'd probably leave them out. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all that's in it. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Sacrifice thank offerings to God. Fulfill your vows to the Most High, and call on me in the day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you will honor me. I don't need your bulls cooked, barbecued for me. Serve me the way I have commanded you, and call on me. Talk to me. It's a fascinating psalm. Israel is meant to be the priests standing between the nations and Yahweh, being Yahweh's image to the world, showing what Yahweh's character is like. What does Amos say? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all I want. You see, we read that and we go, how does that fit with God saying, keep the sacrificial system? It's linked. If you look at the undergirding of the sacrifices, what it's about, it's still the same as I want justice and fairness. It's only if you start heading off down the track of idol worship, of being like the nations, then the whole thing becomes unlinked. So what would a rewritten kind of Genesis 1 look like? Then God said, let us make mankind as our vice-regents in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God called mankind to reflect his character as the cult image, representing Yahweh. He created them, male and female. That's a hard thing, even for today's society, where women are still treated on the whole abysmally. And yet right at the beginning of the Bible, male and female are called to reflect God's character, to be his vice-regents. NT, sums it up this way. God chose Israel from the rest of humankind for a special, strange, demanding vocation, So perhaps what Genesis is telling us is that God chose one pair from the rest of early hominins for special, strange, demanding vocation. This pair, call them Adam and Eve if you like, were to be representatives of the whole human race, the ones in whom God's purpose to make the whole world a place of delight and joy and order, eventually colonizing the whole creation, was to be taken forward. God the Creator put into their hands the task of being His image bearers. If they fail, they will bring the whole purpose of the wider creation, including all the non-chosen hominids, down with them. They do fail, as we know. Just as Israel failed. Just as we fail. Do we live up to our calling? We often say, oh, sin, I'm fallen. Well, when do we encourage ourselves to live up to the high calling of God? To be a fully embodied human? To be the humans we're meant to be? That is the calling of Yahweh. Brian Moyder Suneman, in one of his songs, says it this way: created in the image of the one who made it all, created like all the other creatures on this spinning ball, created with a job to do, a royal role to play, to bear the image of the Maker every single day. We don't give up stuff to get more stuff. We don't do sacrifice. We don't serve God for the blessings. We serve the Creator of the universe because He is the Creator and He loves us. And we need to do that for every human being and every creature on this spinning ball. It's Yahweh's temple, and we are His image. We are to reflect His character to the whole rest of creation. That's a big job to do. It's a massive job to do. And sin is the thing that so easily entangles us and trips us up. But through Jesus, we're freed of that we may live into our calling. So, we'll end it there.